My son-in-law burst out laughing. "This yacht is mine now, old man. Get lost." He sailed away with my $2 million pride and joy, thinking he'd won. But I activated the secret tracker and waited. When the authorities boarded at midnight, his face twisted in horror. He screamed for mercy. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. I built my life on two principles: family first and never mistake kindness for weakness. At 67, I thought I'd mastered both. Turns out I was wrong about the first one. July 15th started like any other Miami summer day. Running 5 premium auto dealerships across South Florida means I can set my own hours. And that Tuesday, I decided to surprise my daughter Julia and her husband Gordon with an early dinner. They'd been living in my beachfront home for 3 years now, ever since I invited them after my wife passed. The drive from my main dealership in Coral Gables to Miami Beach took 40 minutes. Simple business problems occupied my mind. Clean solutions. The kind of thinking that had built me a comfortable life. The house was quiet when I walked in. Too quiet. I heard Gordon's voice coming from my study, and something in his tone made me pause in the hallway instead of announcing myself. "The old fool has no idea," he was saying into his phone. His voice carried that particular smugness I'd learned to tolerate for Julia's sake. "The yacht will be ours within weeks. I'm telling you, he's so far gone, he won't even notice until it's done." My hand tightened on my briefcase. The yacht. He was talking about Ocean Spire, the $2 million beauty I'd bought with my late wife for our retirement dreams. 42 feet of gleaming hull and teak deck, moored at the marina where we'd planned to spend our golden years. Yeah, I know the timeline," Gordon continued. "Trust me, this old man is so soft. He'll probably thank us for taking care of things." The words hit like a physical blow. Old man. Soft. I'd built a business empire from a single used car lot. I'd negotiated deals with manufacturers, banks, corporate clients. And this middle manager who couldn't hold down a job for more than 2 years thought I was soft? I counted to 5, controlling my breathing. Then I walked heavily down the hall, making sure my footsteps announced me. When I pushed open the study door, Gordon spun around, phone still pressed to his ear. His face flickered through surprise, calculation, then settled on false warmth. "Hey, Dad, didn't hear you come in." He never called me that before the wedding. Now he wielded it like a weapon disguised as affection. "Just wrapping up a work call." "In my study?" I kept my voice mild, curious, not accusing, not yet. "Oh, better signal in here." He pocketed his phone with practiced ease. "How was the dealership?" "Profitable, as always." I moved to my desk, noting how he'd been standing right in front of my wall safe. The safe where I kept important documents. Yacht registration, property deeds, financial records. "What brings you to this part of the house?" "Just looking for Julia. She around?" "Your wife's whereabouts are a mystery to me, Gordon. Perhaps try calling her." Something cold flashed in his eyes before he smiled. "Right. Good idea." He brushed past me, and I caught the faint scent of my aged scotch on his breath. The 30-year-old bottle I kept locked in that same safe. That evening at dinner, Julia seemed unusually attentive. She'd actually cooked, which happened maybe twice a year. "Dad, you look tired," she said, passing me the salad. My daughter, 35 years old, with her mother's blonde hair and none of her warmth. When had that changed? "Are you sure you should be working such long hours?" "I'm 67, not 97. "Still?" Gordon leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. The wine I'd paid for in the house I'd paid for. "At your age, certain activities become risky. Take the yacht, for instance." My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. "What about the yacht?" "Well, going out on the ocean alone at your age, it's dangerous." His concern was as genuine as a $3 bill. "Julia and I were thinking, maybe we should take over the maintenance, the occasional trips, to keep her in good shape." "Her engine needs an experienced hand," Julia added quickly. Too quickly. I looked between them, these two people sharing my table, living in my home, eating my food. Gordon's eyes held barely disguised greed. Julia's held something worse, indifference to anything but what she wanted. "I appreciate the concern," I said slowly, "but I'm perfectly capable of managing my own property." Gordon's jaw tightened. "Just trying to help, old man." "I'm sure you are." I stood, appetite gone. "If you'll excuse me, I have some paperwork to review." I heard them whispering as I left the room, but I didn't turn back. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan's slow rotation. The ocean breeze came through the window, carrying the salt smell that usually comforted me. Not tonight. The conversation replayed in my mind on an endless loop. The yacht will be ours within weeks, not we'll help manage it or we'll use it together. Ours, possession, ownership, as if I were already dead and buried. At 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went to my study. I pulled out the Ocean Spire's registration documents. My will, the power of attorney paperwork Julia had pushed me to sign last month. Just a formality, Dad, in case something happens. I'd signed because she was my daughter, because I trusted her, because I'd raised her to be honest and good. Looking at those documents now in the harsh light of my desk lamp, spread across my mahogany desk like evidence of my own stupidity, I realized I might have made the biggest mistake of my life. The question was, what was I going to do about it? Sleep became a stranger over the next few days. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Gordon's voice. The old fool has no idea. He was wrong about that. I had plenty of ideas. The problem was I didn't want any of them to be true. Wednesday morning, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen counter, watching Julia and Gordon move through their routine. She kissed his cheek. He squeezed her waist. A perfect couple, living their perfect life in my perfect house. Dad, are you okay? Julia asked, noticing me staring. You seem distracted. Just thinking about the past. That much was true. I'd spent the whole night thinking about the past 3 months, replaying conversations I'd dismissed as harmless. Like 6 weeks ago when Gordon casually asked over breakfast, So Frederick, you ever update your will? You know, after everything. After everything, meaning after my wife died. He'd made it sound like concern. Now I heard it differently. Why do you ask? I'd replied then. No reason, just, it's important to have these things in order. At your age. At my age. He loved that phrase. Then there was Julia, about a month ago, appearing in my study with papers and a pen. Dad, I need you to sign this. She'd set the documents down without looking at me, her attention on her phone. What is it? Just a power of attorney, in case something happens and someone needs to make medical or financial decisions. It's responsible planning. I'd skimmed it. The language seemed standard. This gives you pretty broad authority, Julia. It's just a formality, she'd insisted, finally looking up from her screen. Do you not trust your own daughter? That's the knife they used. Trust. Family. Love. I'd signed because saying no would mean admitting I suspected my only child of something terrible. Now, watching her butter her toast, I pulled up another memory. 3 weeks ago when I'd gone to my safe to get Ocean Spire's registration papers for the annual insurance renewal. The documents weren't where I always kept them. I'd found them eventually, filed under a different section, and assumed I'd misplaced them myself, old age and all. Except I'd never been careless with important papers. 35 years running dealerships had drilled organization into my bones. I'd mentioned it to Gordon that evening. Strange thing happened today. Couldn't find the yacht's papers in my safe. Probably just forgot where you put them, he'd said without looking up from his tablet. Happens to everyone. Not to me, it didn't. And then there were his trips to the marina. Twice in the last month, Gordon had announced he was going to check on Ocean Spire's engine. Since when do you know anything about boat engines? I'd asked the first time. YouTube tutorials, old man. We're not all stuck in the last century. He'd grinned like he'd made a joke. He'd come back both times with grease on his hands and stories about checking oil levels and inspecting the hull. I'd nodded along, choosing to believe my son-in-law was actually being helpful. Now I wondered what he'd really been doing on my yacht. Friday morning, after they'd both left, Gordon to his middle management job, Julia to wherever she spent her days, I went to my safe. I kept duplicate keys for everything important. The house, the cars, the dealership, the yacht. I pulled out the small wooden box where I stored them. The yacht keys were gone, both copies. My hands shook as I set the box down. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't old age making me confused. This was real. I sat in my study for an hour, just breathing, just thinking. Every businessman knows you can't fight what you can't see. I needed information. I needed proof. By Saturday afternoon, I'd installed a hidden camera in my study, tucked behind the books on the top shelf where no one ever looked. The installation took me 15 minutes. Another advantage of running high-end dealerships is access to the security systems we use to protect million-dollar inventory. That evening, I played the perfect host, made dinner, poured wine, asked about their week. Gordon talked about his job in that self-important way of his. Julia showed me pictures on her phone of brunches with friends I'd never met. "We should take the yacht out next weekend," I suggested casually. "Get her ready for fall sailing season." The look Gordon and Julia exchanged lasted maybe 2 seconds, but I saw it. Alarm, calculation, conspiracy. "Actually, Dad," Julia started, "maybe you should rest next weekend. You've been looking run down." "I feel fine." "Still," Gordon cut in, "maybe give it another few weeks. Let us handle the prep work. We'll make sure she's ready when you want her." "You're very thoughtful." I smiled and changed the subject. Later, alone in my room, I checked the camera's feed on my phone. The technology streamed directly to a secure cloud account. Whatever they did in my study, I'd see it. I just wasn't sure I was ready for what that footage might show. But ready or not, the truth was coming. And when it did, Gordon and Julia would learn that kindness isn't weakness. It's a choice. And I was done choosing it for people who saw it as stupidity. The old fool, Gordon had called me. We'd see about that. The camera was a stroke of genius, if I do say so myself. 3 days after installing it, I got my first real proof that this wasn't paranoia. Sunday night, July 21st. I was in my bedroom, supposedly asleep, watching the live feed on my phone. At 11:30, Gordon and Julia, my only daughter, crept into my study like thieves, which technically they were. Gordon went straight for my desk. "Where does the old fool keep the financial statements?" "Check the filing cabinet," Julia said, already rifling through papers on my bookshelf. Her voice carried that dismissive tone she'd perfected over the past year. "We need to know exactly what we're getting." My hand tightened on the phone. Getting. Not inheriting. Getting. Gordon found what he was looking for and spread several documents across my desk. "Look at this. 5 dealerships. Total net worth around $12 million. The yacht alone is $2 million. The Miami Beach house is 3.5. And he's just sitting on it all." Julia's laugh made my stomach turn. "Playing the lonely widower while we're stuck living on your pathetic salary." "Hey, watch it!" Gordon snapped. But he didn't deny it. Couldn't, really. Middle management at a logistics company didn't exactly compete with my automotive empire. "I'm just saying, once we get the yacht sold, that's $1.8 million to start our real life." She picked up the Oceanspire registration papers. "Michael said the forged transfer documents will be ready by next week. Then we just need Dad out of the way for a few days." The spa trip idea was perfect. Gordon's smug satisfaction came through clearly on the recording. "Get the old man away. We'll re-register the boat in my name, sell it to that buyer in the Bahamas, and by the time Frederick realizes what happened, the money's in our offshore account." "And there's nothing he can do about it?" Julia set the papers down. "He's too old, too slow, and frankly, too trusting. He still thinks I'm his sweet little girl." They laughed together, my daughter and her parasite husband, laughing about betraying me. I watched them for another 20 minutes, discussing their timeline, their escape plan, even arguing about how to split the money. Then they left, turning off my study light like considerate guests. I didn't sleep that night either, but this time it wasn't confusion keeping me awake. It was cold, calculating fury. The next morning, Monday, I stopped for gas on the way to my dealership. Pure chance put me at the same station as Steve Daniels, who owned the marina where I kept Oceanspire. Steve and I went back 15 years, casual acquaintances who shared a love of the water. "Frederick," he waved from the next pump over, "haven't seen you at the marina lately. Everything okay with the boat?" "Fine, as far as I know." I kept my tone light, curious. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, just noticed your son-in-law's been spending a lot of time there." Steve wiped his windshield absently. "Saw him with some guy in a suit last week. They were on the boat for about an hour." My pulse quickened, but I maintained my casual expression. Gordon mentioned he wanted to help with maintenance. "Yeah, probably." Steve hesitated. "Though he did ask me some weird questions about yacht sales, transfer procedures, documentation requirements, that kind of thing. I figured maybe you were thinking of upgrading." "Just Gordon being thorough," I lied smoothly. "You know how detail-oriented he is." Steve laughed. "If you say so. Anyway, if you need anything at the marina, let me know." I drove to my main dealership in Coral Gables, but my mind was racing. A man in a suit on my yacht, questions about sales procedures, The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed made me sick. That evening I played the dutiful father again, made small talk over dinner, complimented Julia's cooking, asked Gordon about his work, all while knowing exactly what they were planning. "Dad, you look tired," Julia said, her fake concern grating on my nerves. "Are you feeling okay?" "Just working hard." I took a sip of wine. "Business doesn't run itself." "Maybe you should slow down," Gordon suggested. "At your age, stress can be dangerous. You should think about delegating more, taking it easier." At my age, there it was again. That constant reminder that they saw me as already half dead. "I'll keep that in mind." I stood, pushing back from the table. "I have some calls to make. International clients, time zones, you know how it is." In my study, I pulled up the camera footage from earlier that day. Nothing dramatic, just Gordon checking my filing cabinet while I was gone. He'd been careful, putting everything back exactly as he found it. Almost exactly. The yacht registration was filed one folder off from where I always kept it. Sloppy, Gordon. Very sloppy. I opened my laptop and started searching for maritime lawyers in Miami. I needed someone who specialized in fraud, forgery, and theft. Someone who could help me not just protect my property, but make sure these two faced real consequences. Because I had finally accepted the truth. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a phase. My daughter and her husband were actively planning to rob me, and they thought I was too old and stupid to stop them. They were wrong about the stupid part, and I was about to show them just how wrong. David Carter's office overlooked Biscayne Bay, all glass and chrome and expensive art, the kind of place that screamed, "I win cases." "Mr. Morgan," he shook my hand on July 27th, a Tuesday morning. "Your message said you needed help with maritime fraud?" "My $2 million yacht, to be specific." I settled into the leather chair. "And the thieves are living in my house." His eyebrows rose, but he pulled out a legal pad without comment. "Professional. I like that." I told him everything. The overheard phone call, the camera footage, Steve's information about the man in the suit. I played him the recordings, watching his expression shift from neutral to genuinely angry. "Clear evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud and theft," he said when the recording ended. "But we need to be strategic about how we proceed." "I don't want to just stop them." I leaned forward. "I want them prosecuted. I want consequences." "Understood. But if we move too soon, they'll destroy evidence." He made notes. "We need to let them prove criminal intent, but stop them before any actual transfer occurs." "What do you recommend?" "First, verify all your documents. Power of attorney will, anything they might have tampered with. I have a colleague, Samantha Fields, who's a notary and documents expert. She can authenticate everything." "And the yacht?" Carter smiled. "How do you feel about GPS tracking and remote engine controls?" I smiled back. "I own 5 dealerships that specialize in vehicles with exactly those security features." "Perfect. Install the best tracker you have. We'll also photograph all documentation and file certified copies with the Coast Guard. Even if they forge new papers, we have proof of the originals." Over the next week, I moved carefully. Samantha Fields came to my house while Gordon and Julia were out and examined every document in my safe. "This power of attorney has been altered," she said, holding the paper to the light. "See the signatures? Yours is genuine, but the witness signatures and notary seal are forgeries." I looked. The ink was slightly different colors. The paper had been refolded to hide it, but it was there. "They replaced what you signed with a version giving them broader powers," Samantha continued. "This would fool casual inspection, but not forensic analysis. I'll photograph this and prepare an affidavit documenting the forgery." "Do it." "I'll also draft a new, legitimate power of attorney with very limited scope and file it with your bank and all institutions. That blocks any attempts to access your accounts." The tracker installation took longer. I went to my most advanced dealership and spoke with Marcus, our head of vehicle security. "I need a GPS tracker with remote engine control," I told him, "but for a boat." Marcus, who'd worked for me 12 years, just nodded. "The marine version exists. Coast Guard uses them for stolen vessel recovery. I can get you one, but installation's tricky. I'll install it myself. Then you need the whole kit: tracker, control module, power supply, antenna." He met my eyes. "Whoever you're tracking won't be happy when they find out." "That's the idea." On August 2nd, I told Gordon and Julia I needed Saturday to work on Ocean Spire's engine. Routine maintenance. Gordon offered to help, but I waved him off. Thanks, but I've been working on boat engines since before you were born. At the marina, I spent 4 hours installing Marcus's tracker, deep in Ocean Spire's electrical system, hidden behind the control panel. The control module gave me full GPS tracking, engine diagnostics, and remote shutdown capability. One click on my phone could kill Ocean Spire's engines completely. Steve wandered by around noon. Need help, Frederick? All set, thanks. I wiped my hands on a rag. Good to see you out here. He hesitated. That guy I saw with Gordon? I remembered where I'd seen him. Miguel Rodriguez's office, over on 8th Street. He's a notary. My stomach clenched. You're sure? Pretty sure. Thought you should know. I appreciate it, Steve. Back home, I changed the locks on my safe and transferred all original documents to a safety deposit box at my bank. New locks, new codes, new security measures that Gordon and Julia knew nothing about. The hidden camera stayed in place, still recording. That evening, I activated the tracker and watched the test signal come through. Perfect. Ocean Spire was now the most secure yacht in South Florida. David Carter called the next day. We've filed certified copies of all your documents with the appropriate authorities. Coast Guard, County Recorder, your bank, everything. I've also contacted Detective Rogers with Miami PD. He handles fraud cases and is very interested. When do we move? When they do. Let them take the bait. Let them think they're winning. Then we spring the trap. I hung up and walked to my study window. Gordon and Julia were at the beach, probably planning their next move. They thought they were so clever, so much smarter than the old man. They had no idea what was coming, and that was exactly how I wanted it. The trap was set. Now I just needed them to walk into it. On August 6th, Julia appeared at breakfast with a concerned expression that would have won her an Oscar if it were genuine. Dad, you've been looking so stressed lately. She set down her coffee cup with practiced delicacy. Gordon and I have been thinking, maybe you should take a break, get away for a week. I looked up from my newspaper, playing the part perfectly. A break? Julia, I have 5 dealerships to run. They can manage without you for 1 week. Gordon leaned back in his chair, smugness radiating off him. You've got managers, don't you? Let them earn their salaries. There's this amazing spa resort in Palm Beach, Julia continued, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Hot springs, massage therapy, the works. Perfect for someone your age. Someone my age. Always with the age comments. I don't know. I folded my newspaper slowly. Leaving for a whole week seems excessive. Dad, you're 67. Julia reached across the table, touching my hand. Her skin felt cold. You need to take care of yourself. We worry about you. The lie sat between us like a third person at the table. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make them think I was considering it. Well, I said finally, maybe you're right. I have been working hard lately. Gordon's eyes lit up. That's the spirit, old man. When can you leave? I suppose I could arrange things by this weekend. Leave Saturday, come back the following Sunday. Perfect. Julia was already pulling out her phone. I'll book everything for you right now. First class, all the way. You don't have to. We insist, Gordon cut in. Consider it our treat. You've done so much for us. Let us do this for you. I watched them exchange a quick glance, a silent communication that spoke volumes. They thought they were so clever, maneuvering the stupid old man right where they wanted him. On August 10th, I made a big show of packing my bags, kissed Julia goodbye, shook Gordon's hand, drove away from my Miami Beach house at 9 in the morning, supposedly heading for Palm Beach. Instead, I checked into a modest apartment 3 blocks away, the kind of place with a landlord who didn't ask questions when you paid cash for a 2-week rental. From there, I had a perfect view of my house and complete access to all my hidden cameras. At 6:30 that evening, a black Mercedes sedan pulled into my driveway. I trained my binoculars on the driver as he got out. 40s, dark hair, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked around nervously before Gordon opened the front door. I pulled up the camera feed on my laptop. The audio came through crystal clear. Michael Rodriguez? Gordon shook the man's hand. That's me. You have the payment we discussed? Gordon pulled out an envelope. 5,000 cash, just like you asked. Rodriguez, the corrupt notary Steve had mentioned, opened the envelope and counted quickly. Perfect. Let's get this done. I have another appointment at 8. They moved to my study. Rodriguez pulled documents from his briefcase. These transfer documents will hold up to any inspection. The signatures are exact copies from bank records. How'd you get those? Julia asked, appearing with champagne. Better you don't know. According to these papers, Frederick Morgan is voluntarily transferring Oceanspire to Gordon Preston as a gift, all legally binding. And the sale to the buyer in the Bahamas? Gordon was practically salivating. Already arranged. He'll meet you at Key Largo at 5 a.m., August 14th. Cash, $1.8 million. What about the actual registration? Julia set down the champagne. Won't the Coast Guard have records? These documents override everything, Rodriguez assured her. I've done this before. By the time anyone questions anything, you'll be gone, and the money will be safely offshore. Gordon raised his glass. To the old fool who made this all possible. Julia clinked her glass against his. The old man's probably getting a massage right now, completely clueless about what's happening. They laughed. The sound made my blood run cold and hot at the same time. One thing, Rodriguez said, pulling out a notary seal. This needs to look legitimate. When did Frederick supposedly sign these? A month ago, Gordon said quickly, before he started getting suspicious. Getting suspicious? Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. You didn't mention he was suspicious. He's not, Julia cut in. Gordon's just being paranoid. Dad trusts us completely. That's why this is so easy. Rodriguez didn't look convinced, but $5,000 apparently bought a lot of willingness to overlook red flags. He stamped the documents with his seal, signed his name with a flourish, and packed up his briefcase. Pleasure doing business with you, he said. I was never here, you never met me, and if anyone asks, those documents came from a legitimate law office in Tallahassee that definitely won't remember filing them. After he left, Gordon and Julia celebrated with the rest of the champagne. We did it, Julia said, her face flushed with excitement and alcohol. The old man's yacht is ours. Not yet, Gordon cautioned. We still need to get it to Key Largo. But yeah, almost there. 1.8 million, baby. What about Dad? Gordon shrugged. What about him? By the time he gets back, the yacht will be gone, money offshore. We have legal documents. He'll look like he's losing his memory. I saved the recording and sat back in my chair. David Carter needed to see this. Detective Rogers needed to see this. The Coast Guard needed to see this. But not yet. Let them take the yacht. Let them think they'd won. Let them get all the way to Key Largo with their forged documents and their buyer waiting. Then I'd show them what this old man was really capable of. August 13th, midnight. My phone buzzed with the GPS alert I'd been waiting for. Oceanspire's engines had started. I pulled up the tracking app and watched the blue dot move away from the marina. My $2 million yacht, being stolen by my own daughter and her husband. The tracking system included audio. I turned up the volume. Can't believe we're actually doing this. Julia's voice giddy with champagne and adrenaline. Believe it, baby. By tomorrow morning, we'll be millionaires. Gordon was at the helm, and I could hear the engine's steady rumble beneath his words. I called Detective Rogers. He answered on the second ring. Morgan, this is it? They're moving now. Oceanspire just left the Miami Marina, heading south, probably toward Key Largo. We're ready. Coast Guard's been briefed, and I've got units positioned at Key Largo. The moment they dock, we move. I'll meet you there. Frederick, you don't have to... Yes, I do. I was already grabbing my jacket. I need to see their faces when they realize what they've done. I hung up and arranged for a helicopter charter. Money well spent. I'd paid David Carter $15,000 in legal fees, Samantha Fields $3,000 for document authentication, Marcus another $2,000 for the tracker equipment. But this was priceless. On Oceanspire, Gordon was apparently feeling triumphant. Through the audio feed, I heard him shout into the night wind, "This yacht is mine now, old man. Get lost." The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they hurt, but because they confirmed everything. The contempt, the greed, the complete lack of remorse. Julia laughed, the sound carrying over the water. Dad will never know. By the time he figures it out tomorrow morning, we'll have sold her to the buyer from the Bahamas, and those forged documents look perfect. Rodriguez did good work, Gordon agreed. $5,000 well spent. The old fool will try to report it stolen, but we have legal paperwork. They'll think he's going senile. Going senile. They were going to make me look like a confused old man who'd forgotten signing away his own property. I recorded everything. Every word. Every laugh. Every moment of their celebration. The helicopter touched down in Key Largo at 3:15 a.m. Detective Rogers was waiting on the dock with 2 officers and a Coast Guard vessel offshore. They should be here soon, Rogers said, checking his watch. The trap's set. The supposed buyer never existed. We've got an undercover officer ready to play the role if needed, but honestly, I think they'll incriminate themselves just fine without him. They will, I said quietly. Trust me, they can't help themselves. At 3:32 a.m., I saw Ocean Spire's lights approaching through the darkness. She was beautiful even now, her white hull gleaming under the stars, cutting through the black water with grace. Gordon brought her in smoothly. I had to admit, grudgingly, that he knew how to handle a yacht. Too bad he'd never owned one legally. The Coast Guard vessel switched on its spotlight, flooding Ocean Spire with harsh white light. Gordon froze at the helm, his face suddenly visible. Confusion, then alarm. This is the U.S. Coast Guard. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Gordon killed the engines but stood his ground. When the Coast Guard officers and Detective Rogers boarded, he actually smiled. Officers, is there a problem? I'm just taking my yacht out for a night cruise. Your yacht? Detective Rogers pulled out his badge. Miami PD. I need to see your registration and proof of ownership. Of course. Gordon pulled out Rodriguez's forged documents with complete confidence. Everything's in order. The yacht was legally transferred to me by Frederick Morgan. See? All properly notarized. Rogers examined the papers, his expression neutral. And where is Mr. Morgan now? At a spa in Palm Beach, Julia cut in, appearing from below deck. He gave Gordon the yacht as a gift. It's all legal. Interesting. Rogers handed the documents to a Coast Guard officer. Because Mr. Morgan has reported this yacht as stolen. Gordon's smile faltered. That's impossible. He signed. Forged documents, Rogers interrupted. We know all about Michael Rodriguez and his fake notary service. We know about the planned sale to a buyer in the Bahamas. We know everything. You can't prove, Gordon started. That's when I stepped out from the cabin below. The look on Gordon's face was worth every penny I'd spent, every sleepless night, every moment of betrayal. His mouth opened and closed like a fish, no sound coming out. His skin went from confident tan to pale gray in seconds. Julia screamed, actually screamed. Dad, you're supposed to be in Palm Beach. You can't be here. But I am here. I kept my voice level, calm. I've been here the whole time, watching, waiting, recording. This is entrapment. Gordon found his voice, though it shook. You set us up. I protected my property, I corrected. You two chose to steal it. That was entirely your decision. Detective Rogers stepped forward with handcuffs. Gordon Preston, Julia Preston, you're under arrest for grand theft, fraud, conspiracy, and use of forged documents in commission of a felony. No, Julia lunged at me, and an officer had to restrain her. You can't do this. I'm your daughter. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Dad, please. Tears streamed down her face now. Real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. Please, it was all Gordon's idea. I didn't want to. Gordon rounded on her. You lying? Enough. Rogers snapped the cuffs on Gordon's wrists. Save it for your lawyers. You're both going to need them. As they led Gordon and Julia off Ocean Spire, I stood at the helm of my yacht, my hand on the wheel where it belonged. The sun was starting to rise over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, and I was still standing. The Coast Guard spotlight hit Ocean Spire like a stage light, turning the dark water white. I watched from the cabin shadows as Gordon's confident smile froze on his face. This is the U.S. Coast Guard. Cut your engines and prepare for boarding. Gordon killed the engines smoothly, too smoothly. He'd done this before, probably during one of his maintenance checks on my yacht. The Coast Guard vessel pulled alongside, and two officers in crisp uniforms jumped aboard, followed by Detective Rogers in his rumpled suit. Evening, officers, Gordon's voice dripped with false cordiality. Is there a problem? Routine inspection, one Coast Guard officer said. Registration and proof of ownership, please. Gordon pulled out Rodriguez's forged documents without hesitation. Everything's in order. The yacht was legally transferred to me by Frederick Morgan, all properly notarized. Rogers took the papers, examining them slowly. Julia hovered near the cabin door, champagne glass still in hand. Mr. Preston, Rogers said flatly, these documents indicate you received this vessel as a gift. That's right. My father-in-law is getting older, wanted to simplify his estate. Interesting, Rogers pulled out his badge. Miami PD, Fraud Division, because Frederick Morgan reported this yacht stolen approximately 3 hours ago. The color drained from Gordon's face like someone had pulled a plug. That's impossible. He's at a spa in Palm Beach. He gave me this yacht. He signed forged documents, Rogers interrupted. We know all about Michael Rodriguez. We know about your buyer in the Bahamas. We know about the $5,000 you paid for fake notarization. You can't prove any of that. Gordon's voice rose, panic creeping in. I want my lawyer. This is harassment. Gordon Preston, you're under arrest for grand theft, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and use of falsified documents. Rogers nodded to the officers, who moved forward with handcuffs. That's when Julia screamed. No, you don't understand. The documents are real. Tell them, Gordon. Shut up, Julia. Gordon spun toward her, and I saw the moment he realized his mistake. The perfect couple facade cracked, showing the rot underneath. Ma'am, you're also under arrest, a Coast Guard officer said, approaching Julia. Same charges. This is insane. Julia's champagne glass shattered on the deck. My father gave us this yacht. He's losing his memory. He probably forgot he signed the papers. I stepped out from the cabin. The silence that followed was beautiful. Gordon's mouth literally fell open, his eyes going so wide I could see white all around the irises. His face went from tanned to gray-green in seconds, and his knees buckled enough that an officer had to steady him. Dad? Julia's voice came out as a whisper, then louder, shrieking, Dad? You're supposed to be in Palm Beach. What are you doing here? Protecting my property. I kept my voice level, calm, professional. Watching you two steal it. You set us up. Gordon found his voice, though it shook. This is entrapment. Entrapment? I installed security on my yacht. You chose to steal it. I didn't steal anything. You gave it to me. I signed nothing. I held up my phone. But I have recordings of you paying Rodriguez $5,000. I have video of you planning this theft. GPS tracking, showing you took my yacht without permission. Julia lunged at me, and a Coast Guard officer caught her mid-stride. You spied on us? Your own daughter? How could you? The words hung in the air between us. How could I? How could she ask me that, after what she'd done? Please, Dad. Julia's tears started, real or fake. I couldn't tell anymore. Please, this is all a misunderstanding. Gordon got confused about the paperwork. We thought you wanted us to have the yacht. We were going to surprise you. By selling it for $1.8 million to a buyer in the Bahamas? I let the words cut. Some surprise. Gordon's face twisted with rage. You're making a mistake, old man. My lawyers will destroy you. You'll spend 7 to 10 years in prison, Rogers cut in. I'd recommend keeping quiet. Everything's being recorded. Frederick, please. Gordon switched tactics, voice breaking. I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. We're family. We can work this out. I looked at him. This man who'd lived in my house, called me Dad while plotting to rob me blind. No, I said simply. We can't. Dad, Julia was crying openly now. Dad, please. I'm your daughter, your only child. You can't do this to me. You did this to yourself. I turned away from her. Officers, I believe you have what you need. I'll be available for any additional statements. As they led Gordon and Julia off Ocean Spire toward the police boat, Gordon kept shouting. Threats, pleas, curses, everything but an honest confession. Julia just sobbed, calling for me, begging me to stop this. I didn't look back. I stood at the helm of my yacht, my hands on the wheel where they belonged, and watched the sun start to paint the horizon pink and gold. Detective Rogers approached, his expression unreadable. That couldn't have been easy. No, I agreed, but it was necessary. We'll need you to come to the station later today for a formal statement, and you'll want to contact your attorney. There's going to be a lot of paperwork. David Carter's already on standby. Rogers nodded, then paused. For what it's worth, mister. Morgan, you did the right thing. Some people would have let it slide, tried to keep the family together. Some people, I said, don't understand that family isn't just blood, it's trust, and they destroyed that long before tonight. The interrogation room was exactly what I'd imagined. Gray walls, metal table, and a two-way mirror. Detective Rogers sat across from me with a thick file folder, his expression almost sympathetic. August 15th, 11 a.m., he said for the recording. Interview with Frederick Morgan regarding the theft of Yacht Ocean Spire. Mr. Morgan, thank you for coming in. Happy to help. I meant it. Every word I spoke here was another nail in Gordon and Julia's coffin. Walk me through what you discovered during your investigation. I pulled out my own folder. David Carter had prepared it meticulously. It started with document fraud. The power of attorney I signed in July was altered. The original gave my daughter limited authority for medical decisions. The version in Gordon's possession gave them sweeping control over my finances and property. Rogers examined the papers. You have proof of this alteration? Samantha Fields, a certified notary, performed forensic analysis. The witness signatures are forgeries. The notary seal belongs to someone who died 3 years ago. That's Michael Rodriguez's signature on the altered version? It is. I have video footage of him coming to my house on August 10th, accepting $5,000 in cash from Gordon Preston and providing forged documents for the yacht transfer. Rogers smiled grimly. I've seen that video. It's very thorough. I own car dealerships, Detective. We take security seriously. Speaking of which, Rogers pulled out another document. We executed a search warrant on the Prestons' computers and phones. What we found was extensive. He spread photos across the table. Screenshots of emails, text messages, spreadsheets. My stomach turned as I read them. This spreadsheet, Rogers tapped one image, shows a timeline. August, secure yacht, sell for 1.8 mints. September, begin process on Miami Beach house, estimated value 3.5 mints. October, explore options for dealership transfers. I leaned forward, reading Gordon's meticulous notes. He'd planned to take everything, not just the yacht. Everything I'd built over 40 years. There's more. Rogers pulled out another sheet. Text messages between Gordon and Julia. I read them. Dad's getting suspicious. Need to move faster. Just keep playing concerned daughter. He's a sucker for it. Can't believe Mom wasted years on him. At least she's not here to see us take what should have been ours. That last one stopped me cold. What should have been theirs? I'd given Julia everything. There's something else, Rogers said quietly. In Julia's journal, from 3 years ago. He slid across a photocopy. I recognized Julia's handwriting immediately. Mom died today, finally. I know I should be sad, but mostly I'm relieved. Now Dad will leave everything to me instead of wasting it on her medical bills. Gordon says we should move in with him, get close, make sure the inheritance doesn't go anywhere else. He's smarter than I gave him credit for. My hands shook. 3 years. They'd been planning this for 3 years, since before my wife was even buried. Mr. Morgan, are you all right? We can take a break? No. I forced my voice steady. Keep going. I want to know everything. Rogers nodded, professional respect in his eyes. We also found evidence Gordon attempted to forge documents for your South Beach Mercedes dealership. He contacted another fraudulent notary about transferring the business license. He what? It didn't get far. The notary was an undercover officer. That's how this got flagged quickly. I sat back, processing. Gordon hadn't just wanted my yacht. He'd wanted my business, my life's work. The district attorney is preparing charges, Rogers continued. For Gordon, grand theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, forgery, and attempted embezzlement. He's looking at 7 to 10 years minimum. And Julia? As an accomplice who actively participated in the planning and execution, 4 years, possibly suspended to probation given that it's her first offense. But the restraining order will be absolute. She won't be able to contact you. Good. Rogers closed the file. I've seen family betrayals. But this level of long-term deception... He shook his head. Don't be sorry, Detective. Be thorough. I want every charge. We've got them cold. Your cameras, GPS, financial forensics, Rodriguez's testimony, it's airtight. I stood, gathering my papers. When's the arraignment? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. You don't have to attend, but you're welcome to. I'll be there. Outside the police station, David Carter was waiting, phone to his ear. He hung up when he saw me. The DA's office just called, he said. They're offering Gordon a plea deal. Plead guilty, 7 years, no parole possibility for 5. And if he doesn't take it, trial and they'll push for the maximum, 15 years. With the evidence we have, they're confident they'll get it. Tell them to push for maximum, I said. No deals. He planned this for years. He deserves every consequence. Carter nodded. And Julia? What's she facing? 4 years suspended to probation, mandatory counseling, permanent restraining order, and complete disinheritance, which you've already handled with the new will. It wasn't enough. 4 years probation for helping plan the systematic theft of my entire life. But it was what the law allowed. Fine, I said. Let's also move forward with the civil suit. $4 million in damages. They can't pay it. I know. But I want the judgment on record. I want it following them for the rest of their lives. Carter's expression was grim satisfaction. I'll have the papers filed by end of day. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dad, please. We need to talk. This is all a huge mistake. I love you. I blocked the number and deleted the message. Some mistakes, once made, can't be unmade. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. And I was done being the forgiving father. The courtroom was packed. August 21st, and Miami's legal system moved fast when the evidence was overwhelming. I sat in the front row, directly behind David Carter, my maritime attorney. Across the aisle, Gordon and Julia sat with their public defender. They couldn't afford private counsel. Their assets had been frozen. Gordon wore an orange jumpsuit. No bail for a flight risk with offshore connections. Julia sat in a cheap gray suit, free on conditional release but forbidden from contacting me. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, named Patricia Hernandez, reviewed the plea agreements. Mr. Preston, you've agreed to plead guilty to grand theft, fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and attempted embezzlement. Is that correct? Gordon's lawyer had convinced him to take the deal. 7 years instead of 15. He stood barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that by accepting this plea, you waive your right to appeal? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Hernandez turned to Julia. Ms. Preston, you've agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and accessory to grand theft. 4 years suspended to probation, with mandatory counseling and a permanent restraining order. Do you accept these terms? Julia's voice cracked. Yes, Your Honor. Before I accept these pleas, does anyone wish to make a statement? David Carter stood. The victim, Frederick Morgan, wishes to address the court, Your Honor. I walked to the podium. Gordon wouldn't look at me. Julia stared at her hands, tears streaming down her face. Your Honor, 3 years ago, I lost my wife to cancer. In my grief, I welcomed my daughter and her husband into my home. I helped them financially. I treated Gordon like a son. I paused. They responded by planning to systematically rob me of everything I'd built over 40 years. Not just my yacht, my dealerships, my home, everything. They waited for my wife to die because, in my daughter's own words from her journal, at least she's not here to see us take what should have been ours. Julia's shoulders shook with sobs. Gordon's jaw clenched. I'm not asking for mercy, Your Honor. I'm asking for justice. These sentences are appropriate. I also want it noted that I'm pursuing a civil judgment of $4 million in damages. Judge Hernandez nodded slowly. Mr. Preston, I've reviewed the evidence, the surveillance footage, the GPS data, the forged documents, your communications with Mr. Rodriguez, and your computer files showing a year-long plan to defraud your father-in-law. This wasn't a mistake. This was calculated, cold-blooded theft from family who trusted you. She turned to Julia. Ms. Preston, you are equally culpable. The journal entries, the text messages, they show not just participation, but enthusiasm. Your mother had barely been buried when you began this scheme. Gordon's face went red. Julia was openly weeping. I hereby accept these guilty pleas. Gordon Preston, you are sentenced to 7 years in Florida State Prison. No parole for 5 years. Julia Preston, 4 years probation with the conditions stated. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Gordon was led away immediately. Julia tried to approach me, but her lawyer stopped her, pointing to the restraining order. Outside the courthouse, the Miami heat hit like a wall. David Carter shook my hand. The civil suit is filed. Even if they can't pay now, the judgment follows them forever. Any future income, inheritance, lottery winnings, we can pursue it all. Good. I pulled out my phone. I'm listing the Miami Beach house today. Too many bad memories. Already found a replacement. Small villa in Key Biscayne. Ocean view. Just enough space for one person who appreciates it. Carter smiled grimly. What about their belongings? Storage unit. They can arrange pickup through you. I don't want to see them again. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Dad, please. I made a terrible mistake. I love you. Please give me another chance. I showed it to Carter. He sighed. Violation of the restraining order. I can report it. Do it. She needs to learn actions have consequences. I blocked the number. Then I opened my new will. Julia's name appeared nowhere in it. My estate would go to charity, cancer research in my wife's name, and a scholarship fund for kids who'd lost parents. Some legacies matter more than blood. Michael Rodriguez had been sentenced the week before. 5 years and permanent loss of his notary license. He'd cooperated fully, providing testimony about Gordon's requests for forged documents on not just the yacht, but also my South Beach Mercedes dealership. The dominoes had fallen exactly as they should. That evening, I drove to my new villa in Key Biscayne. Smaller than the Miami Beach house, but mine. Truly mine. No parasites, no manipulators, no thieves wearing the mask of family. I poured myself a whiskey, 25 years old, and stood on my balcony watching the sun set over the Atlantic. Tomorrow, I'd go back to running my dealerships. Next week, I'd take Ocean Spire out for a proper voyage. But tonight, I just stood there, feeling the weight of betrayal finally lifting. Justice had been served. The price was high. I'd lost my daughter, or rather, discovered I'd never really had her, but some prices are worth paying. I raised my glass to the ocean. To knowing your worth, I said quietly, and never letting anyone steal it. September 28th, the final civil court hearing. I'd sold the Miami Beach house for $3.4 million, slightly under market value for a quick sale, but I wanted it gone. The new villa in Key Biscayne had cost $1.2 million, leaving me plenty of liquid assets and my 5 thriving dealerships. Gordon was already serving his sentence at a medium security facility near Orlando. Julia was living with her mother-in-law in a rundown apartment in Hialeah, working at a discount retail store to meet her probation requirements. The civil judgment hearing was a formality. With their guilty pleas, liability was established. This was just about making the $4 million official. I arrived early. David Carter was already there, organizing documents. "They'll both be here," he said. "Gordon gets transported from prison for civil proceedings related to his case. Julia has to attend as a defendant." Good. At 9 sharp, the bailiff brought Gordon in. Prison had not been kind to him. He'd lost weight, his skin had a grayish tint, and his eyes darted nervously. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like fear. Julia arrived moments later. She looked directly at me, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading. I looked through her as if she were glass. Judge Wilson, handling the civil case, was efficient. "Given the criminal convictions and the documented damages, I'm granting the plaintiff's request for $4 million in compensatory and punitive damages. The defendants are jointly and severally liable." "Your Honor," Gordon's lawyer stood, "my client has no assets and no ability to pay." "That's not the court's concern. The judgment stands. Garnishment of future wages and assets is permitted under Florida law. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell. As the bailiff prepared to take Gordon back to prison, Julia broke free from her lawyer and rushed toward me. "Dad, please, please, just talk to me. I know I made a horrible mistake, but I'm still your daughter. You can't just throw me away." 2 court officers moved to intercept her, but I held up my hand. They stopped, watching carefully. I looked at Julia, really looked at her. I saw her mother's eyes, the little girl I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd sent to college. But I also saw the woman who'd celebrated my wife's death as an opportunity, who'd called me a fool while plotting to rob me, who'd written in her journal that I was wasting money keeping my dying wife comfortable. She stood there 3 feet away, trembling, waiting for forgiveness, for weakness, for the soft father who'd always given in. "You forgot to check if I was really helpless," I said quietly. Her face crumpled. "What?" "You forgot to check if I was really helpless." I kept my voice level, calm. "That was your mistake." I turned and walked away. She called after me, but I didn't look back. Outside, the September Miami sun was brilliant. David Carter caught up with me. "That's it then. All legal proceedings concluded. What happens now with the judgment?" "Any money they earn above minimum subsistence can be garnished. 25% of wages. If either receives an inheritance, sells property, wins anything, we can seize it. The judgment is good for 20 years and renewable. They'll spend the rest of their lives paying for what they tried to do." "Essentially, yes." I shook his hand. "Send me your final bill. You've earned every penny." The next week I took Ocean Spire out alone. Just me, the ocean, and the memory of better times. I'd packed a bag with my wife's favorite captain's jacket, the one she'd bought me for my 60th birthday. It still smelled faintly of her perfume. The water was calm, the sky impossibly blue. I steered south along the coast, no particular destination in mind. Just movement, just freedom. My phone buzzed with notifications I didn't check. The world could wait. At sunset, I anchored in a quiet cove near Key Largo and stood at the helm, wearing my wife's jacket, watching the horizon turn gold and crimson. The price of justice had been steep. I'd lost my daughter, or rather, I'd lost the illusion of having a daughter. The real Julia, the one capable of such calculated cruelty, had always been there. I'd just refused to see it. But I'd kept my dignity, my business, my self-respect, my freedom. The wind picked up, and I adjusted course, feeling Ocean Spire respond beneath my hands. This yacht, this beautiful vessel I'd bought with my wife for our retirement dreams, was still mine, still here, still cutting through the water with grace. Gordon was in a cell. Julia was in a different kind of prison, one made of regret and consequences. And I was here, under open sky, master of my fate. Some might call it lonely. I called it peace. The ocean stretched endlessly ahead, full of possibilities. I had years left, if I was lucky. Years to build new memories, meet new people, maybe even find new family. The kind you choose, not the kind that shares your blood. Because I'd learned the hardest lesson. Family isn't about DNA. It's about loyalty, trust, love that doesn't come with conditions or calculations. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who wear the mask of family but carry the heart of thieves. I started the engines and turned Ocean Spire toward home. Behind me, the sun set on everything that had been. Ahead of me, the stars began to appear, promising everything that could be. I was 67 years old, and for the first time in 3 years, I was truly free. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.